Welcome back to Heaven's Vault. So, you can't get to the bottom of this. I found what I was missing and it was just an axe in the dust. I didn't really think we could get to the bottom of this due to the way it looks, but I wanted to try. So now we're done with this particular site, and before we move on, I think it's important that we talk about structure, story structure. It's especially important in something like Heaven's Vault, where I can't tell if the story structure is damaged because of the context engine or because of a flawed concept. So with that in mind, we're going to be talking about the arc of the story so far, and it's going to be basically just 100% spoilers. So if you're just tuning in now, don't. Play the game or watch the first episodes or whatever, because we're going to go straight into spoiler territory. Also, keep in mind they just patched the story, so if you're playing this after me, you may get a very different progression. And we'll probably replay it once or twice more at the end of this series to see what changed and what sort of different states we can get it into. So we just learned what we would classify as a major twist, and that twist is that people get turned into robots. All of the robots are people. That's pretty important, because the robot that we've been adventuring with is now a person. The scrap of foil that we picked up is a person. These are all people. The problem is that it doesn't really connect at a story driving level for a couple of reasons. One reason is that our poor main character here, Leah, she doesn't actually understand that. While it's been spelled out, she hasn't been allowed by the writers to understand what's going on. The writers have allowed the player to understand, but not the player character. This isn't necessarily a problem. There are lots of stories that can arise from that dichotomy, the idea that the player character is progressing with information that the player has or doesn't have. You know, there's a difference in the information, and that gives you a very poignant story. Normally that's used for tragedies, but it works well for a lot of different kinds of stories, except for that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that they spilled the twist and didn't go anywhere with it. It's not catastrophically hard to have a story based on this twist. It's a very basic idea. There's a twist that flips the entire timber of the story upside down. Everything we thought we knew is wrong, and now we have to do everything that we wanted to do differently. We have to understand everything differently. We have to go someplace because now it's important. But that's not what's happening here. There's nothing important that we have to do because we know that machines are robots. There's nothing emotional happening besides the fact that we now know that there has been a big, horrible event far in the past. There are a lot of stories where realizing that the robots were people would have been a major structural change. For example, if the robot we picked up wasn't given to us by Miari, but was instead a runaway. And we were like, why does this robot not want to go back to its owner? And the owner was like, give me back my robot, I love it. And you're like, I don't really know what's going on, but I don't really like Ioxians, so we're going to keep the robot with us for now. Or maybe the person who loved the robot was like, fine, I'm sure it's better off with you, even though I love it. And now we find out that the robot's a person. That completely turns the robot's story on its head. That's similar to what's happening here, right? The robot's story is now turned on its head, but the robot's story has no mass to it. There's nothing about the robot's story that changes because it's a different thing. We weren't really feeling like the robot was being backed into any corners. We didn't really feel like it had a lot of outreach to other people. So far, the only thing it's been is a cipher that allows the world to communicate with us. It occasionally gives us messages from Renba. It occasionally talks about the clues we find, but it doesn't have any personal emotional attachments to anything. And that might just be because of the direction I played the game. Maybe. But I think that you need to establish those emotional beats faster if you're going to have a twist like this. Another option would be to go the other way. So we are exploring because we need to find money. Either our kid or Roy's kid is extremely desperately sick. So we are trying to treat her with as much money as we can find, and now we find out that we can make people into robots. Now there is a really tight gristle at the center of this story. Maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe the fact that we have sheer lung is going to come into play, and we are going to have to make the decision if we want to become a robot. Maybe. maybe they'll spring it on us, like Miari's actually sick. Maybe. But again, it's not set up so that the twist is at the right time. The reveal doesn't make the story different. It might in the future drive story decisions, but it doesn't change what we already know. This is a problem with a lot of stories in games, and it's the reason why I always say that your story shouldn't depend on a twist. It's okay if your story has a mid-game twist, because mid-game twists aren't as high stakes. This is a mid-game twist. But in general, even then, you have to know what you're trying to accomplish with the twist. And I can't simply say, oh, the Heaven's Vault writers screwed this up. The Heaven's Vault writers are extremely good at moment-to-moment writing. Structural writing, maybe not so much. 80 Days had some structural flaws as well. But fundamentally, the real issue is that I'm not sure they can be good at structural writing, not with the engine they're using. Context engines are fundamentally not about writing tight stories. They're about building contexts. But with that in mind, I think we could have built a better set of contexts for this particular event. If we set up contexts specifically so that we know at what point we can twist and change the context, then we can set up stories that require the player to get that far along the context before getting the clue that provides the twist. So if it's because our Shearlung is going to kill us and we're going to need to turn into a robot, then we're not allowed to discover this location. We're not allowed to discover the Withering Palace until we are really sick. If the robot is going to have like a sudden twist, oh, it's actually Jaqui somehow, even though the timeline doesn't work out, and, you know, Miari is in love with Jaqui and turned him into a robot, that's great, but we have to know that before, we have to know there's a strong emotional connection before the twist. Similarly, we can't get too far along the context before the twist hits, because if we die before we turn into a robot, or if we learn that Miari turned Jaqui into a robot before we learn that people can be turned into robots, you can see how the twist is not going to connect. It's actually going to work against you, because the solution to the context will just fall apart. But I think that twists are quite possible with context engines. It's just that you have to reinterpret the way you structure a story. And I don't think these guys did that. I don't think the Heaven's Vault devs put quite enough work into making this twist work. And that might just be because the structure of the engine is so new and so different. And I imagine that the more games they put out, the tighter the structure is going to be. But for now, this twist is a little bit of a disappointment, because it's a good twist with nothing to twist. See what I mean? Anyway, I just wanted to make a quick little short episode about the story structure of this game and some of the flaws I see. We'll talk more about it as we move along, but I thought it was important enough to get out of the way right now. Have a good one.